Hi, Abhishek.
Hey, hi.
Okay. Welcome to this session, everybody. I am Shritala Ganapati, and I'm delighted to be hosting this panel today. I'll just take a moment to introduce myself. I am a HR business partner with Baker Hughes, and I lead the people agenda for Baker Hughes for the India, Middle East, and Africa regions. That's my day job, and I'm also an executive committee member of the NHRDN Mumbai chapter, which is hosting this session today. Established over 30 years ago, NHRDN is an autonomous, not for profit, professionally managed organization which plays a catalyst role in grooming leaders for tomorrow. It has more than 12,000 members representing multinationals, public and private organizations across 30 chapters in India and beyond, and it serves as a reference point for HR professionals. So if you're not already a member and you'd like to join us, please log on to NHRDN website to know more about the membership. Otherwise, you also have Pratima Singh on this call, and she will leave her email address in this chat, and you can reach out to her to understand more about the membership. So maybe before I introduce our interesting and diverse panel today, I have a small story to share. And this is probably a story each of us as HR professionals, hiring managers would have encountered. So, you have your team is growing, you have a position that has been approved by your management, and you're super excited by the growth agenda in your organization. You go ahead and you post the role internally, externally, and you are astounded by the response that's coming in via your job boards, your internal talent systems, your referrals. People are reaching out to you on social media, and you are super excited. Then what you realize is that you have a number of resume shortlists, phone screenings, and interviews later. A few couple of months have passed between all of these processes. You found your one elusive candidate, right? And this candidate, you have a couple of discussions with this candidate. Both of you agree upon the job role, the title, the compensation, and you are excited to have this person on board. You also negotiated to have the notice period cut down from a 3-month notice period to a 2-month. You buy out this offer to buy out this notice period. You exchange a few WhatsApp messages formally or informally as well. You connect with this candidate. Everything seems hunky dory. Day one of onboarding, probably 10 a.m. You try to reach out to this candidate. Maybe he's stuck in traffic and you don't know what's happening. Okay, you will wait. 12 noon, still the candidate is not reachable. You send out a message to the recruiter asking, did this person get in touch with you? Still not panicked, but you're just getting a little bit agitated over there. Then 3 p.m., still no response. Your recruiter's also not heard from this person. You still give it a benefit of doubt, probably a personal emergency there, right? Then Tuesday goes, Wednesday goes. It's it's almost like this candidate has fallen off the first face of this earth, right? And that's where you realize that you have been ghosted. And as a hiring manager or anybody in talent space, that's quite literally a horror story. All puns intended over there when I talk about a horror story. And that is exactly what we are going to be talking with this panel about during this session. So this is the trend of ghosting. And today we will be discussing in detail with our diverse thought leaders from different areas about this trend of ghosting. So before I get into this topic itself, can I perhaps request for a round of introduction? Maybe Abhishek, can you start?
Sure. Yeah, Shritala, you did warn me that you'd pick on me in this panel, didn't you? No, so uh, thanks, Shritala. And quick introduction, work with BrowserStack, which is one of the largest SaaS companies in India. Uh, Prior to this, worked with Uber, LinkedIn, Microsoft, and Alcon. Um, Super excited to be part of this because yeah, ghosting uh, is a phenomena which has affected everyone in the talent ecosystem. So looking forward to learn from all of us here, and I see a few familiar faces and names, pictures. So it'll be a good conversation.
Thank you, Abhishek. Harish, can I request you to go next?
Sure. Great. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be able to part of the panel. Thank you. So I essentially run a startup in India. It's called Recorded. It's essentially building a credit bureau for accounts receivable transactions. And as part of that journey, we faced obviously ghosting, especially in the last few months. And just seeing the look on our team's face after they've been waiting for a candidate to join after 3 months, it just really bothered us a lot. And we started to build a solution around it. And we were also getting very similar requests for this kind of a solution to be built into our recording platform. And so, yeah, we about 3 months ago started on the process and have just launched that company called Profile Log. So look forward to participating in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Harish. Kamal, can I request you to go next?
Hey, thank you, Sritala and NHRD for calling me in. Good evening, everyone. Yes, my name is Kamal Karant, and I co-founded a company called Xfino. We are a specialized staffing company today, and put about close to 400 technology talent to work every month. So with that and last 2 decades being in the industry, some of the understandings of when people join, when people don't join, I thought I had my own theory till the last 12 months taught. Last 12 months taught new lessons of how hiring happens, but happy to be here and share our experiences. Thank you.
Lovely to have the 3 of you here. And what I'm really hoping for is we have a conversation where we, explore the topic of ghosting from 3 different perspectives. Abhishek here brings in the experience of talent acquisition and a talent partner role, and Kamal brings in the consulting and the specialist staffing kind of a hat, and Harish can potentially give us the solution to this problem as well. So with that, let me probably get into the topic itself. So I've been looking into some data that was available in the market, and I realized that a LinkedIn study actually says that 28% of candidates ghosted their recruiters in the year 2021, and that's a huge number, 28%. And while one can attribute a certain percentage of it to COVID and other aspects, it was realized that actually the study also spoke about it, said that only 4% was actually related to COVID and medical emergencies. The rest of it was due to various other reasons. In fact, the trend numbers were almost similar before pre-COVID also, which was around 19% in 2019. And this is a huge number, imagining that these are folks who have actually ghosted at the stage where an employee agreement and a contract has been signed between the employer and the candidate, and then you've just disappeared without notifying the employer that you're not going to be joining. And that can have a lot of impact with the way that companies can plan for their hiring as well. So perhaps in this discussion, I would like us to discuss a little bit more about the emerging trends of ghosting by candidates. And maybe in this, if we can look at nuances, whether this has to do more with certain industries, is it specific to certain regions, or is it across the globe that we feel that this kind of trends exist? Are there nuances or can this trend be attributed to certain genders, or can be attributed to certain generation as well? Perhaps if the panel can delve into all of these nuances and talk to us more about it. And can I request Kamal to go first in this?
Hey, thank you, Shritala. One of the things that I've come to realize in the current situation is, ghosting has become kind of cost of doing business. All of us are complaining about ghosting. I think we should take it with a pinch of salt, because we also have to observe that the business has increased. It's a kind of a live by the sword or die by the sword kind of a situation for all of us. So we are primarily hiring so much because there's so much business. So why are we complaining about ghosting is what I would start. And of course, we keep talking about ghosting of different kinds. And I think for clarity purposes and reinforcing what Shritala just said, we are only going to talk about ghosting post-offer. That means you agree to an offer and then you've ghosted. So that is I guess the framework of our conversations are going to stick to that. I also want to bring a bit of a clarity around how we are cross-wiring between offer dropouts and ghosting. We see a whole number of people who decline the offer. I think the heartburn is more because we do so much of negotiation, we get people into accepting an offer, and people do accept offers. And if you look at the data points that I'm in the middle of, I look at it as like there are almost about 80% of people decline offers. And maybe about 15-20% of people ghost. They are missing in action. They go away and do whatever they do so that you can't trace them again. I think our heartburn mostly comes not because of how many declined the offer, but who ghosted. And obviously, all these things have happened because we are all fishing in the same pond at the same time. We've increased the premium of the candidates by 5 people calling the same candidate for possibly 5 different companies, right? So I guess we have no choice but to do that because the digitization of the world has ensured that we are all going after the same kind of talent. And of course, the physicality versus virtuality, the virtual engagements have made it easier to ghost. Imagine going to the office, attending interviews and meeting people, and then ghosting is a bit of a too much to handle, right? When you have relationships. So for me, if I look at just 20% of the people are ghosting, I say just 20%, though I know some of you may feel it could be higher, but I think by and large, the industry trend suggests that it's only about 20% of people who are ghosting, and remaining are offer decline. So I think that distinction is very important as we talk through, because we tend to put them together. And for me, I look at it like it is a kind of a situation where we even ghost every day in various ways. So if you look at the calls that we get, we get insurance agents calling us, credit cards, banks calling us, and we don't actually pick up the call and say, hey, don't call me. We possibly don't pick it up at all, right? So in our nature, I believe that we do many of these things socially where it is okay not to respond. It's okay to sort of just keep quiet, not to respond to an email. So I believe that we have carried it through in a world where technology hiring, where we have seen maximum ghostings, where we believe that it is okay not sort of go under the radar, and it's made it easier. And maybe some of us are socially shy, or we have negotiated so hard that it becomes very difficult to go and say, hey, look, I don't want to join you anymore. So in my view, the single largest problem statement as I see is that we intertwining between offer drops and ghosting, because like Shritala said, on a Monday morning, it is very difficult to go and tell a hiring manager or a business head that, look, this person had to join. We don't know where he or she is. It makes you look in really bad as a recruiter or in HR as you might be. And I think this who disappeared matters a lot than how many who actually declined the offer and didn't join, right? So we feel we are entitled to get a response from the person. And I think we, in front of our stakeholders, stand as somebody who are guilty. And that's why I think the heartburn of ghosting is more. So, but I would go on to say that it's a cost of business. Our business has increased. We possibly should increase our own investments to possibly have a funnel to ensure that clearly we have a higher funnel to deal with it, rather than sort of labeling people as ghosting and make it sound as though some criminality has been incurred upon us. So that's my limited view on what I'm seeing across.
Great. Thank you, Kamal. Abhishek, can I request you to add your perspective?
Sure. Very interestingly, Kamal called out the difference between offer rejects and ghosting. The small little distinction or caveat that I would make is, for me, whoever even declines the offer immediately, maybe a Saturday before a Monday joining, for me, it's as bad as someone who's ghosted, really, because you've really left someone no room, wriggle room, right? Having said that, I think what is very important to understand now is that to a large extent, the tables have turned. If you look back at posts on LinkedIn, maybe a few years back, there used to be these rants of candidates talking about how recruiters have ghosted them. Now we are talking about candidates ghosting us. But I think it stems really back to how well we develop relationships. And that's really the root cause. And how easy is confrontation avoidance? If you make confrontation avoidance difficult, chances of a ghosting situation is going to go down, right? And I think to Kamal's point, HR or recruitment looking guilty in front of business, I mean, most of the places, it is super important to have business go hand in glove with recruiting and HR in terms of the entire engagement. So it's not really, well, HR didn't get people in. The organization was not able to get people in. So for me, the perspective is really bigger than just, even if one person's ghosting, clearly either the organization value proposition beyond the comp and the role is not great enough or not articulated enough, or the recruiter's not doing a good enough job in terms of building that rapport with the candidate, or the hiring manager is not building a strong enough sort of value prop, right? So I think, so I guess that's for me my perspective on this. I wouldn't necessarily, and essentially it is a partnership between not just the recruiter and the hiring manager or the hiring panel and the leadership of the company, but also an extended partnership with partners that potentially companies would work with, right? Because the same partners would then go around placing folks who may have ghosted. So that partnership becomes really important as well to ensure that there are, I wouldn't say consequences, but essentially some guardrails around how candidates get processed and what is okay and what is not.
Thanks, Abhishek. Harish, can I request you to go next?
Yeah. So I agree with Abhishek's sentiment that person who comes and declines at the last minute is pretty close to ghosting. They might as well ghost. The only thing is you're now waiting on the last day. From a small company perspective, waiting for that 3-month notice period takes 1 month to hire. Losing that 4 months for a critical role where we don't have a lot of overlap, it's quite detrimental to the company and to the team. And while it has an impact on the company, but really has an impact on our entire team. particularly those in that department that are carrying the weight to fill that position. So we completely agree. We've actually seen, to your earlier point, our experience has been about 20% ghosting, about 10% offer dropouts. And it's been across the board, from sales roles to tech roles, even BPO roles as well, right? So call center roles as well. So we've seen it across the board. And I think the critical part is, how do we address it? How do we make it easier for the information to flow? So there's some visibility into their decision making. There's now platforms are available, so hopefully we can leverage that to improve the communication gaps that are taking place now.
Great, thank you. And if I may ask a follow-up question on this, I know that Abhishek, probably you hire for regions beyond India, right? And when you look at this perspective of ghosting, is it something very specific to specific markets, or do you find this trend across?
Yeah, I have not seen this trend in Europe and US for sure. People who decline for sure, and interestingly, they would decline well in advance, which they're well within the rights to. But accepting an offer and either declining last minute or ghosting, I've not seen in any other regions.
Okay, that's interesting. So just before I go on to the next question to the audience here, I know a few questions are already coming up in the chat, but please continue to put in your questions in the chat and we will take it up towards the end. Thank you. So that brings me, to the next question, and which is while when we looked into the reasons for ghosting, probably I'll allude to the same study that was there, that it said that just about 40% of the people actually ghosted for reasons that were directly related to compensation and perks. The rest 60% were for other reasons. Like I think Abhishek briefly spoke about it with respect to the value proposition, the brand, and the experience as well. So my question is, what can organizations do in order to improve on their processes, whether it's the experience, the recruitment process, to avoid this ghosting? Any tips for recruitment professionals and the community to look inward and improve upon this? And maybe I can start with Abhishek this time.
No, sure. So this is something that I'm super passionate about, and thank you, Shitala, for allowing me to go first. I think there are two parts to it, right? How an organization looks at an overall recruiting experience, how a recruiter treats his or her job, and then how actually three parts, how a candidate sees a recruiter. If recruiters remain rec fillers and people who are just there to service requirements of an organization, ghosting will happen, offer declines will happen, and there'll always be someone who will pay more, right? No amount of benchmarking can guardrail for that. So one, I think, huge appeal to recruiters is to look at themselves as people who are borrowing the tag from one of my ex companies, but connecting people to opportunities, right? Connecting the right person to the right opportunity. Like, we have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the job is right for the candidate as well, rather than just fill a job. That is super critical. In-house or consulting, doesn't matter, right? That is super critical. Second, once a candidate sees the recruiter being invested in his or her career, I think that seeds the trust piece, and you can go back to the same candidate multiple times over years, and they would still trust you to have that initial conversation and not drop out if the value prop is good enough, right? So that's the initial piece, and that is completely in the hands of the recruiter. No externalities involved, right? Being authentic, being genuine, being invested in the candidate. Second, the organization. So I think big part is there's this entire thing around the bells and whistles of employer branding, social media, Glassdoor and all of that. But the real Christmas tree is the actual process and how you're really treating candidates and employees. If you have a broken system, broken culture internally, if you have a broken hiring process, there's no way any amount of bells and whistles around social media branding can cover that up, because there's so much information available today. People will figure out. So that's the second thing, being authentic to the entire process. Interviewers being well trained, like especially in this remote world, simple things like, hey, being respectful, being on video when the candidate is on video, ensuring that you don't have kids running around in the background. If you have, then at least acknowledging it and not just going ahead with an interview very disrespectful to the other person on the other side, right? That's the second piece. The third piece is really how the leadership and the management looks at it, in terms of the overall value proposition, which is built. And for me, it's built inside out rather than outside in. You can't think of what your EVP is going to be and try to force fit your internal processes. Everyone can't be a Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft. You are what you are, and that's what the authentic self of the organization needs to be put out there, and allow for people to self-select rather than force fit. That's going to reduce a lot of these issues, and that's a little philosophical, but yeah, that's my take.
Great. Thank you, Abhishek, for those insights. Harish, request you to add your insights here, please.
Yeah. So, in the US, we're starting to see ghosting to increase now. Previously, it wasn't there as much. The way the process typically worked, and I worked in the US for about 25 years or so, and we would go talk to multiple companies for employment, and we would then pick what we thought was the best for a long-term view, right? And based on that, we would accept the offer. So there wasn't this taking your offer and then going to negotiate. It was negotiating based on your own credentials and abilities, and then accepting the offer. And then you hope to have a long-term career, whatever that is, 2, 3, 5 years. So I think that's the big difference. What I've seen in India is where the idea is to take the offer and then go and negotiate, while the company that's expecting you to join is sort of in lingering in the behind the scenes. But also now in the US, we're hearing about the same problems, and we're hearing the problems of candidates or employees having multiple jobs. So all those are sort of part of the equation right now with the COVID and working from home. But I think these are the sort of challenges we'll face. And also in India, what I've seen compared to our companies in the US is that so much money's come into the system from investment point of view that companies are scrambling to hire. So certainly it's great for the candidates. It's a good environment for Indian candidates. But I think we have to do this respectfully on both sides. And from our company, we've spent the time with the candidates after they've accepted the offer to stay in touch with them. Our senior leadership has taken them to lunch to make sure they're engaged. Yet we've had sort of last minute dropouts, right? So I think those challenges will remain regardless of what you do from your side. Like Kamal mentioned earlier, this is cost of doing business, and the more we can minimize it, the better off we'll be.
That's another perspective there, Harish. Thanks for that. And Kamal, can I request for your views now?
Before I came today, I actually called two of my IT recruiting leaders. Between both of them, they manage about 130 IT recruiters. So I said, tell me something. So they told me a whole lot of things that organizations are doing and can do stuff. These are all boring stuff. These are all regular stuff. Tell me something which is, jaw-dropping stuff. They told me nothing, So I was very disappointed that, two of my senior leaders who possibly put together 450 IT people to work every month did not come with anything which I could mesmerize all of you with, So the boring stuff they said is what I'm going to list to you, Clearly from the time, like one of you mentioned, the employer value proposition or the employer brand is reflected in the process, in the experience. We all know that. These are the boring stuff they told me. One is, how long does it take from the time you take a CV to interview, right? 2, how many times do you reschedule? The average time that we calculate in the data points of 5,000 data points that we saw was 15 to 20% of the schedules get rescheduled, right? Then of course, like Abhishek mentioned, the wait time, when you come on a Zoom call, I'm only referring to that nowadays. So how long do you have to wait, in the name of I'm slipping from another meeting? Yeah, everybody is busy, right? And of course, some of us come and read the CV right there, and it's visible that, you haven't seen my CV before, and all the faux pas that happens around that. And the sheer number of interviews, we end up doing 5-6 rounds of interviews. I think CEOs get recruited faster than that, in terms of number of interviews and the time to offer. Of course, everybody is shopping, right? We want to interview 3 to 4 people before we decide on one. But can we decide on this guy whom we have interviewed because there's a certain skill matching? Why should we always shop and compare this person to 3 more people? So that means, your time to offer is taking more time. And 2 important things which they told me, which has increased their own onboarding ratio, is the role clarity. I think half of the people who are being interviewed today in the technology roles do not know what's going to happen after I join here. I'm not saying it for all, but primarily we see that this role clarity, when provided by either the organization or the recruiter, or best in case is hiring manager, nothing like it. But of course, the challenge, the last one they told me, is about the hiring manager engagement. The expectation of the hiring manager in most of the cases is that you are the recruiter. What are you doing? Why can't you actually engage with the guy? But I'm supposing that each hiring manager possibly have a span of control where they have few people reporting to them. If they can't do that virtual coffee or a call and engage with the person, I think they don't deserve to be, hiring anybody at all. So this is the boring stuff they told me about, clearly what has to be done by the enterprises to ensure that, we minimize ghosting. But one common denominator, as you can see from what I said, is very clearly speed. The speed is the most important aspect, which, we used to take 4 to 6 weeks in the past to, offer somebody. We need to curtail that, bring it down to about, let's say about 7 to 10 working days, so that you are also able to, it's not about just hiring through speed, without compromising on the quality. If you are able to do your multiple rounds in a time without rescheduling, without waiting, without taking the, shopping around, taking the longest time, keeping the candidate hanging. And obviously the hiring manager's direct role, we have seen, at least 30% improvement in terms of our onboarding ratio, and also the reduction in ghosting. That's what they told me. So all of you in this call know this, no rocket science, but doing this day in and day out is the biggest challenge, because everybody is busy. Nobody is able to interview enough number of people, though that is the biggest problem. And every Friday, I can't get on a call with any of my, recruiters, for the reason that that is when most of the organizations are spending more time to see, and there is nobody being recruited. And I think that rush we have to stop and give this a priority. So that's what I would say. A long answer to a short question, Sheila.
Thank you, Kamal. And I wouldn't certainly call that as boring tips. Extremely relevant, and the audience also seem to be acknowledging this. I see a lot of comments in the chat. I think Neha says completely agree, and it's ultimately your org and your brand that gets hampered because of the poor recruitment experience, and of course ambiguities lead to people not joining. So I see Vijay's hand up. Hold your thought, Vijay. We will open up for questions very shortly after we go through a couple of more themes that we would like to explore with the panelists. So that brings me, to the third question that I had for all of you today, which is one is looking inward and introspecting on our own processes and the experiences that we want to provide to the candidates. But it is also to be acknowledged that individual organizations cannot probably solve for the issues of ghosting on their own. We will need to collaborate to some level with other organizations to address this as a cohort of organizations, and this in the context where I've seen memes that say that you trip in Bangalore, which is our Silicon Valley, and you get 3 offers, alluding to how hot the marketplace is. And it also puts in a very paradoxical view, right? At one side, we are all competing for the same talent. At the same time, if we don't collaborate amongst each other, then we probably will not solve for this issue of ghosting. It's an issue that will come to bite us in future in a bigger way. So that's my question to the panelists over here. How do organizations, or how can organizations potentially collaborate? And maybe let's start with Harish and your views here.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, we've built a platform which is a credit bureau for non-banking transactions, similar to that, like CIBIL is for banks, right? So we're similar to that. We're starting to build a platform for candidates accepting the offers. And once that data is put on our platform, and if the candidate accepts another offer, we inform the candidate to say, you have multiple offers outstanding. Please pick one. And they have 3 days to do it. Once they pick one, all the organizations are informed which one they've accepted, which one they've declined. And if they don't take any action in 3 days, then we inform the companies to say this candidate has multiple job offers outstanding. You may want to address this. So at least you have some visibility, right? Instead of waiting till month 3, if you can catch that in 15, 20 days after they've accepted the offer, you can sort of plan accordingly. So I think the collaboration is very critical. We've seen these type of systems work in other industries. So yeah, we've started to build that out, and hopefully you always come sign in, join up, and collaborate with us and help us build this out. It's very early stage. So we're obviously looking for a lot of feedback. And I agree, I think it has to improve from both sides. And the candidates have been ghosted as well. I think, but like we've mentioned earlier, the critical part is, it's also a good indicator for the candidate if the company is not responding to them in a timely manner, what kind of culture they would have. It's a good indicator. Do they even want to join this company? But I think once they've accepted the offer, the commitment from both sides is very critical. So that's why we're trying to capture whatever happens before. It's really up to the candidate. In fact, a lot of times for the sales roles, I want them to be persistent, right? So I want them to see how they'll follow up, because that's part of ghosting. We get ghosted from our investors, customers all the time. So I think that part is very critical. But yeah, the key part is a commitment, and how do we take it forward from there?
Correct. Kamal, over to you for your thoughts.
Unlike the collaboration of financial institutions, where the creditworthiness check is something that they collaborated for. Obviously, there is a financial incentive, banking sector, banks not wanting to carry NPAs. It's also driven by a macroeconomic impact, if you ask me. Whereas here, the enterprise is in a brutal war for talent where collaboration stands low chance, in my view, except for the salary carteling that happens once upon a time, and the notice period carteling by large organizations at 3 months. I don't think we really collaborated in any which way meaningfully. So it's Harish, all the best to you, but we would like to support you, but I'm just calling out what's not working. And also another part of collaborating to tackle what I call as seasonal offer drops and ghosting, not really convincing, for the reason that, of course, we are seeing once in a lifetime kind of a ghosting, because of what has happened in the technology space. And, if you go back in time, there were seasons like this. I can recall last time was 2015 when, the startups really disrupted the kind of hiring world in India. And, we really went bonkers in terms of looking at offer drops. After that, it is the last 12 months. So I would like to believe that, would you like to collaborate for something which is more seasonal versus something which is more eternal, right? So also collaboration in this space could also mean denying opportunity for the right job seeker or skills in a way, So if you ask me, this collaboration thing, if we do consider, probably is a nice to have versus a must have.
Abhishek, your views, please.
Can I just say a +1 to Kamal? I think absolutely bang on, because the hyper competitive world that we operate in, if I know that a candidate has ghosted, say, a LinkedIn today, would it matter for me to hire him in my organization as a software developer? Definitely not, right? If he meets all the skill sets and he has a fair degree of reason why he decided not to join that particular organization and so on. So I think with the competition happening and with the tech market as hot as it is right now, people operating remotely, it is going to be even if collaboration does happen, or like tracking will become humongous, and then the tracking piece and the effort around that would possibly take up more calories than doing actual hiring, which I do not think is worth the effort in that sense. Secondly, this is a black swan event. This is not going to happen always, like Kamal pointed out. So I think a lot of it will get, it's part karma, but it'll get sorted, because the recruiters that get ghosted by a candidate who are with a certain organization right now may not perennially be with that organization. They'll be somewhere else, and the candidate's reputation will get tarnished eventually, because the recruiter would obviously crib about it. So it's a social phenomenon through which that automatic censorship of that candidate would happen to a certain extent, of the social circle of the recruiter and so on. So I think that candidates should be aware of. But beyond that, putting a formal structure around it, I'm not too sure how efficient would it be, or would it be even good for business.
Sure.
Can I add to that?
Go ahead, Harish.
Yeah. So look, I think in my 9 years working in India, ghosting has been going on. So I don't think it's a limited time frame. What I've seen is it's increased significantly, and as the war for talent is much stronger, it's having a greater implication. Before, you could sort of refill that position, and I don't think see the thing slowing down by any means. Personally, in a similar impact, when we started recording, we had the same conception from a lot of people to say that no one's going to give you data because data is sacred. We're starting to get data, right? And so I think it's a matter of time. Yeah, we can all sit and say this is a problem and put our thoughts on LinkedIn, or we can try something. So I think we're open to trying, those who at least give it a shot to see. And it's not censoring anyone. It's it's giving them an opportunity to say, if you want to decline an offer, here's an opportunity to do it, and at least it'll correct some behavior. Right? Over time, there'll be people who'll get past the system. They'll continue to work around the system. But I think unless we collaborate, we can keep writing these comments on LinkedIn, and probably not much more will come out of it.
So that's exactly what I meant by the fact that we have a diverse panel coming in with diverse thoughts over there. So Harish, maybe I'll start with you, because you spoke about data over here. So that comes to my question. You also spoke about something like a credit score, very similar to that in the market, right? And that's where, with all of this data and information that's available, is there some kind of a dependability score or an index that really will make practical sense in the long term to help us understand candidate dependability scores?
Yeah, I think if we can capture this data, and next time the candidate goes to apply, and that visibility is there, that look, there's a chance this candidate may not join or may decline your offer close to the start date, or as a no-show. At least you have some indicator, right? And I think probably the behavior will change. And if we make it easy, I think someone had mentioned, I think Kamal or Abhishek, can remember, if we make it easy where it's not confrontational, they can just click a button and the company's informed, at least the company knows it, right? None of us are going to call and, hopefully abuse the candidate, right? But hopefully at least we know, and we can move on our business, go to the next candidate. I think particularly for startups, it's a huge issue because we don't have multiple people we're hiring for the same role. Right. So it's not like given our budgets, I can't hire 2 people, say, okay, one of them will show up. And we don't do it because we can hire 3-4 people and then decline the offer last minute. That's also something that's going to start happening to protect ourselves. So I know, okay, I've got 4 candidates, 3 of them, I can tell them not to show up the last day. That's also not fair. Right. So as we're trying to be respectful to the candidate, I think if we can get that same kind of transparency and visibility, I think it'll go a long way. And again, the point is that those who are intentionally continuing to do this, like the intentional defaulters who abuse the system, yeah, they should be called out. I have no problem saying that, hey, the candidate that's done this 5 times now, right? At least we have visibility. And hopefully that'll change some behavior and make it easier for them to share their perspectives.
Okay. Kamal, would you like to add over here?
Nothing much, but I was looking at what predictive analytics can do, if at all, So it might work if you blame it all on the candidate, but as you know, they are not alone in this, right? So we'll work with some of the companies which use tools which claim to help sort of the trend around ghosting or in fact onboarding per se. All credible tools, but when we look at the personal experiences of it, we see that they're not working. Recently one of the clients said that this candidate is a 90% joining ratio or whatever. The candidate didn't join, two of them didn't join, and now they jumped the tool, because it's two examples, but they were very important, who are possibly drawing almost, 7-8 million kind of salary. But so what I'm saying is that, we do not have enough data. Yeah, like Hari said, eventually all these things might come together if you are at it and able to get. But today it's not working. So that is the truth of it. And of course, we also know that organizations are equally responsible for ghosting, and their dynamics are largely under the data radar, And, we've tried throwing tech and lately data and AI at many behavioral challenges of HR and hiring particularly. We keep moving from, tool to tool, but problems remain. And there's always a new avatar they take, right? So in my opinion, as of now, with what we have seen, AI stands a low chance as there's more behavioral and less data, Even if we gather sufficient data of candidate behavior, the other dynamics related to conversation, recruiter and hiring manager personality, organizational reputation, and more that are largely unknowns. So I think we're dealing with a complex situation. So in that way, I'm at this point of time not giving a high five on these predictive analytics. And one of the opinion polls we did recently in terms of, this was on LinkedIn, in terms of we asked a question about what do you think is the strongest reason as to why candidates are ghosting potential employers. You would actually look at, that the single largest, opinion that came out was poor hiring experience, which was 40%. Too many offers to handle was 21%. Offers collected and traded was 29%. Tit for tat was 10%. So still, I think if we can do much better in poor hiring experience quadrant, I think we will solve a whole lot of problems as recruiters, as enterprises who are hiring. I think if you ask me, that's the silver bullet.
Great. Abhishek, over to you for your thoughts.
Sure. I think just summing up because my thoughts have been aligned with Kamal on this one. Data and tools can do only so much. I think for me, it's always about the human in HR and just making that human piece stronger and better, just to ensure, and like that follows through to recruiting as well, just to ensure that if we treat, today's a day of analogies. So if we treat candidates as commodities, they are going to treat us as commodities, right? If we treat them as human beings, people think through their aspirations, keep that at the center of the experience. Like I said, which is why I mentioned that I have not, in my experience, seen ghosting happening in the US or Europe. Other companies may be seeing it, touch wood, right? I'm just, I don't want to jinx it. But it is also about the overall experience that they are receiving through the process, right? That's absolutely the single most important thing. And thank you, Kamal. Now you've provided data to really back that up, which was always back of mind as a gut feel that, hey, it is about the Christmas tree and not the decoration, really.
Thanks, Abhishek. And that therein lies that aspect that today we are increasingly talking about the use of AI and analytics for improving on the recruitment process itself. So how do we maintain a balance between the human experience aspect of it and the AI aspect of this entire hiring and the recruitment process? Do we see a few questions over here on the chat? So in case anybody wants to go off mute and ask questions, yes, I have Neha's hand up. Neha, over to you.
Hi, thank you so much. I think this was a very interesting conversation. What I'd like to, ask the panel here is the fact that, while we're using AI everywhere, and you say, of course, AI is being used in recruitment and HR. There is a zone where, once a person gets an offer letter and the time that he joins the organization, there is a complete, null and void usage of any, technology or data driven aspect around that area. Do you think a tool which would help engage candidates from the time they get an offer to the time that they join an organization would be helpful, which would ideally be able to capture their behavior and kind of ascertain the risk of no show for the organization per se?
I can take a stab at it. Sorry, Harish, you want to?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, for me, the tool is the recruiter and the hiring manager. Right? Nothing else would necessarily give you enough inputs unless there's that human element. Said that, there are things that we have tried, and I can share maybe a couple of things. One is a lot of the pre-onboarding process, which may not be confidential to be shared with candidates, right? The more they complete of that, we know that if they're investing time, chances are that they'll join. Remote times, I think one big piece is sending the laptop well ahead in time. May seem like a very small operational thing, but trust me, the guilt factor of having to return a laptop is a big one. We've had candidates turn down offers saying that, hey, but the other company has sent the laptop already. How can I say no to them now? So once bitten, always shy. So I think that's the other one. Yeah, I think these are two things that we've done. It's worked out fairly okay, at least in India, where we've been facing these challenges.
If there's anybody else who'd like to, take this answer as well, but I'd like to put in a point here. Even when, the recruiters, like you're saying, the human aspect is required during this particular zone. Now, what happens is when they say, that predominantly what they do is keep the candidate warm. But there's absolutely no context. They don't really know what are various clarifications that they require, what is the ambiguity that they require, right? Is that because a lot of times it's a digital native, if I could call it a digital native workforce in today's world, right? They don't love talking to people. They kind of go more on chat, and they're predominantly writing more rather than speaking. So if these when you say that human touch, which is extremely important, if they have context in clarifying, that will make it more more worthy a conversation, and more would end up becoming more in terms of ensuring that the person you're actually identifying the right aspects to clarify, rather than just keeping things warm, right? So
so sorry, just to clarify, Neha, I didn't talk about a keep warm initiative. I talked about the hiring manager and the recruiter keeping in touch with the candidate through the process, plus some pre-onboarding. So that, assuming that the hiring manager would have context. If he doesn't, then God save the organization. So as I said, it's going to be a partnership between the recruiting professional and the hiring manager. Hiring is everyone's problem, not just recruiters' problem. Also, I think the way OKRs are done for recruiters, at least we have got that changed. It's not on just getting a higher call or an offer accept. It's actually on the journey and the candidate experience scores that the candidate gives at the end of the hiring process, irrespective of whether the person's hired or not, right? So I think that pushes a recruiter to do a better job in terms of being invested in the candidature rather than just following step ABC. Sorry,
Sure.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, if I can just add to that. So, we've gone through this personal experience in our own company where we kept up with the candidates. Like I mentioned, the managers took them to lunch, spent time with them. Everything was on track, right? And then they turned it down. It was almost like the cases we had in the last couple of months, which really pushed us to start this, was about like 1 week before the start date. So I don't know if that also helps. I think that's a good way to do it. Obviously, you're putting your best foot forward with the candidate, as we all should. But I don't think that part of that will solve the problem. But I think those folks who's 30% or so who don't care about sort of communicating properly has a massive impact. So in fact, we started using Profile Log in our company about a month and a half ago. And we shared openly with the candidates that we'll be submitting this data. And we've had 100% join rate. We had people who didn't sign the agreement, the offer letter, which was perfectly fine. I'd rather go to my second and third choice. But at least we knew the candidates were serious. And so, yeah, we've been able to curtail some of that. And again, this is not AI. This is pure raw data. You're going to join. It's going to get communicated to the company. It's going to give you an opportunity, the candidate, to respond with your decision to the company. I think those things that we can make it easy. Like you said, there's no engagement during that period for a lot of companies, and everyone's tight resources. Once you sort of get a candidate, you expect them to join. And you kind of move on to the next candidate, right? Not everyone, like we're talking on the panel, is able to support the candidates and keeping them warm and keeping in touch with them. So I think it's a challenge that will continue, and hopefully we can collaborate and figure this out.
I just want to add one thing. If you're a fan of tools and we're going to recruit in scale, there's a company called sensehq.com. It's a company which probably Abhishek is a little familiar with, but it's an Axel-funded company. So they seem to have done some good work, mostly in US. All their customers are in US, so I've not used them. But I think the things that they have as case studies and all points towards a candidate engagement platform. And repeatedly, VCs are investing in them. They're getting more and more money. So I'm supposing they're doing something right in US and something's happening. Though I see that all their customers are all staffing companies. And of course, there are companies like Amazon which are using them. I urge you look at sensehq.com. And, so that's more the toolish kind. If you want to look for a tool, I think that's one of the tools that you should look for.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for your views there. Neha, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
So, Vijay, I see your hand up. I see your question on the chat, but would you like to go on and share your question?
I would like to ask the panelist that ghosting is something which we all suffer from. And especially it's very critical and it's very, very high cost to the company when it happens to a critical position on which the organization is banking on, where time is a very critical factor. Now, having said that, the problem is that there is nothing you can do to stop ghosting anyhow. So what is the 1, 2, 3, actions that one would take in case they experience ghosting? Now, for example, you have a critical position, you have zeroed down on the best person, you have done a candidate profiling, you have done a behavioral assessment of and have been very satisfied that the probability of ghosting is not going to happen, and everything is gung-ho, and something goes wrong for some reason beyond your control, and you cannot do anything about it, but you have to move on. So what is that move on thing that you will do for 2 reasons? One is, of course, you have to fill that position, first thing. Second is, there is there is nothing you can do to the candidate. So yes, while we are devising certain initiatives and action plans to reduce the rate of ghosting per se, but having experienced it, what is the 1 or 2 immediate steps that in your opinion organizations have taken, or in your experience you have taken, to salvage the situation?
Jay, if I can take a try. So I'm a great fan of pipeline. You can actually do everything that you want, but we don't know the unknowns, variables that are playing around with with a job seeker. With that, I think as much as I would do all the boring steps that, like I said, my IT heads recommended in terms of ensuring that we give the best candidate experience, ensuring that we do everything right from time to interview, not rescheduling, ensuring that we are prompt on time, we prepare well, we engage with the job seeker, reduce the number of interviews, we provide role clarity, we ensure that the hiring manager engagement is at top. We do all these things. At the same time, never be in love with your number one candidate. That's the rule of recruitment. So we are all so much in love that we think the number two candidate is a failure. So you would invariably see the hiring manager saying, send us a fresh slot. What is a fresh slot? They're lying somewhere. It's the same name change. Somebody else comes. We are very happy because somewhere we have already decided that in our queue, this person is number one. Everybody else is a reject. I think that mindset has to go, from all our, hiring managers at this point of time. And the only way, along with these boring steps, I would recommend is have a pipeline. It reduces your heartburn.
Even if you have a pipeline, do you tell the potential empaneled candidate that you have been empaneled and we have made an offer, and probably in case the person doesn't turn up or anything for some reason, you would be the second person or third person in line. What in your experience when you say that to the candidates, do they take it in the right earnest and await their chance? And second thing is, the other thing is, what about the notice period? For example, nobody is going to be on in the pipeline by serving a notice to his current employer. Even though if you have to tell this number two person who is empaneled, there would always be a lead time of the notice period. So is there any way to work around that? It's a very obvious question, but I don't know, is there any experience in that regard?
I'll need Abhishek's help, Abhishek, but because I started this, I'll
take
a stab.
Yeah, take a stab at that.
I'll give you to take over whenever it look like. But I think, Vijay, I think the starting point is how you would actually communicate to the candidate about whether he or she is number two, right? Nobody likes to be number two, though I guess some of the famous Bollywood movies have been made based on the, number two choice. But I don't think in the candidate world, anyone would like to hear that, you're number two. I once took an overseas opportunity because somebody rejected it. For 6 months, I was very unhappy that, I was the number two choice by my boss. So I guess it's the same thing works, even in the job world. None of us want to be number two. So I'm sure our recruiters are smart enough to tell the people that they're not. There's so many, everybody gets it that interviewing process is a chakravyuha, so they bring all these disclaimers that they're taking time, somebody's traveling. I don't think by truth you can solve this, because I'm sure that candidate also will ghost you if he or she comes to their number two. That's my view. Okay, so that's point number one. So in my view, the notice period is a big elephant in the room. I don't think we have found enough answers for that. What I saw many large enterprises doing right now is they only interview candidates on the move. In the sense, anybody who's in the notice period is the first person they want to interview, right? So it sounds, to an extent, stretched and unethical, but the point is that at least we know this person is leaving the job, right? At least I can tell you honestly, 80% of the organizations we are working right now saying get people on a notice period, because it looks like half of the IT world is anyhow on notice period, right? So it's a large pool, So that's what I would say in terms of notice period and whom you should go after. Maybe, there's always this saying of passive candidate, the guy who's not looking for the job is the best person, go look for him or her. That world doesn't exist. Everybody who's on social media today is actually an active job seeker. Everybody who's not on social media is also an active job seeker till the opportunity knocks on them. So my view is that, you definitely will have to look for people who are already on the notice, so that, your chances of getting them faster is high. I won't say that's the best methodology, but that's what's working right now. Anything, Abhishek?
Yeah, so short answer is not just a silver medalist, have a bronze medalist as well. But no, beyond that, I think what has practical tips around what has really worked in terms of keeping silver medalists warm, if you will. We would never ever say that they are the silver medalist, right? We would say that, hey, for this particular role, potentially it didn't work out well. However, loved your experience. I think once they feel that, again, I'll boil it down to the, like, and that's where when we hire recruiters also, the biggest piece that we are now looking at is resilience and ability to think beyond just filling recs. Filling recs is very passe. If people, I mean, that's the big differentiator that the recruiter has to have. Secondly, I think while pipelining is great, uh, it has to be mindful pipelining, because if you're not able to engage with those people through any sort of meaningful content, I mean, there won't be a pipeline to fish from, right? So I think while you may have a pipeline, etc., but the hiring process, and through that, if you have 2-3 people going through to the final rounds, have that handshake with the hiring manager saying that, hey, in case the number one choice doesn't join, are you okay to move ahead with the other people who are in the process? Having that conversation upfront and sign off upfront helps, rather than when the first person ghosts and then they might say, hey, like Kamal said, build a fresh pool. I would never walk down that path. If I spent 1.5 months working sweat and blood on a rec, uh, I will have enough people. I would like to say so. If the recruiter is worth their salt, I would have enough relevant people on that rec, on that search itself. And there's no foolproof answer to this. Like, what if the bronze medalist also declines? Well, then you go back to the drawing board. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, Harish. Harish, you also had something. I think you had.
Yeah, sure. So Vijay, like I mentioned, we've started taking this approach in our offer letters, that we inform them that we'll be submitting the data. And just from that, the seriousness of the people who have accepted the offers has increased significantly. So people are just not accepting our offer and then taking it and shopping it around. I also don't want to hold back the offer saying, I'll give you the offer when you join. If we're serious about it, we like a candidate, we'll make the offer. We're very clear that we'll be submitting this data. And if you don't join, it'll have a reflection on your profile, and that'll be shared with other employers in the future. I mean, all the journey is fine, all the pipelines are fine, but when we get to that point, I want a candidate who's truly intending to join us. If you're not, I'll take the fourth candidate, right? Because if I know they're serious and I don't have to face my team on month 4 and look them in the eyes and say, guy didn't show up, we don't have to restart it again. I just don't want that with my team. I think we all talk about experience for our team and the company, how we should make their jobs easier, their life easier. But if we don't solve this problem, the burden falls on the team. My job goes on because I'm going to keep pushing the work, right? But the team that needs to fill that role, they're the ones who feel the brunt of it. And just seeing them, and these are dedicated employees. They've been with us, for a long time, and ultimately we're putting the burden on them. And again, they'll also get fed up at some point. And for small companies, when you don't, one candidate is all 4-month journey, right? Second candidate, if that happens, it's an 8-month journey. That's not a way we can run companies. So I think for me, it's very critical. I'm very straight up with them that, we intend you to join. We expect you to show up. If not, we're going to submit the data. And then, because also candidates are submitting data on us, on Glassdoor, through the interview process. It's perfectly fine. It's helped us improve, right? So many companies are improving because there's accountability, there's visibility now. They can go and see. In fact, it's even worse for us because we don't even know who's put the comments. We can't even sort of go back and say, hey, this is not true. There are comments on us for, salaries not being paid and all that, which is complete nonsense, right? But you just can't even counter that. So I think we have to bring some accountability for the companies. Otherwise, this journey, we all can, like I said, keep writing on LinkedIn, like those messages, but unless we sort of collaborate together and do something, it's not going to change, in my opinion.
Thank you, Harish. That's a very good pointer or a solution that you have suggested, that you upfront engage the candidate on the seriousness of joining. and in case if they don't do, you have every right to go back and comment on their hiring potential, so that it's a safeguard for the other potential employers. But having said that, is it legally allowed? For example, today, can I ask someone who's sitting in US and who's supposed to join a critical position with one of my clients, and I'd go and tell him, I also initiate a conversation with him that, see, if you're serious, please, we are serious, we are interested in you, and we have to welcome you on board. But in case if you don't do, we reserve our rights to take certain initiatives in terms of what you say, putting a caveat against your profile or something, because that's ultimately the purpose, to create a deterrence or sort of seriousness among the potential candidates, so that we also know that there is some onus on their part. They are not just going through the process at the cost of a great cost to the company. So that legal aspect, any issues on that in that area?
So in the US, we don't know. We're actually just exploring that now as we speak. In India, it's clear. So we've actually had multiple legal advisors look at it. As long as at least we've taken the safeguard to even put it in our offer letter that we're going to do it, and they sign off on it. So they give us consent. And again, this data is not going to be available publicly. You'll have to obviously have their PAN number to be able to look up this data. So it's not like you're going and putting it on LinkedIn, and they've given you consent through the offer letter, and then you can submit the data. And when the new employer goes to look, they'll even have to give permission to them to look for that data, right? So that we're building the whole consent mechanism, just like credit bureaus do. No one can come look at your data randomly and then sort of use that in a negative way. So I think at least from legally in India, we haven't encountered any problems. And but US, we're just checking now. So because the same issues, like I said, are starting to happen in the US as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neha and Vijay, for your questions and thoughts over there. Conscious that we are nearly on top of the hour, and it's been an engaging conversation. If any of you have any other questions, you can definitely post it on the NHRDN LinkedIn post, and we can take up the conversation from there. To the panelists over here, I've been taking notes, and a lot of interesting and diverse thoughts that came by, and few things that stuck with me were about confrontation avoidance, and recruiters need to be more than rec fillers. They need to be connecting people to the opportunities there. And the simple thought that you don't need to love your first candidate, and it's not you have your second, your third, and your fourth as well. And about our thoughts on predictive analytics and data-based insights. While it is in its nascent stage, I think we all agree that there is scope for that area to evolve in the future as we talk about this trend. So it's been an engaging and insightful conversation for me, and I hope all of the audience over here also agree to that. And with that, any closing thoughts or comments from the panel, and then we are good to go. Abhishek.
No, I think this is a journey that we are all in together. Harish, the way you're approaching the database building is very interesting, right? So I think that's like when I initially thought about it, I thought it's another AI-based solution, but this is slightly different, and I'm sure it's going to go a long way. I just would encourage everyone who's attending this call to really think about internal processes and why people would want to ghost you, rather than cribbing about just people ghosting. That's the long-term solve really for me. But yeah, that's my closing thought.
Harish.
Yeah, no, thank you, Abhishek. Look, I think the idea is not to be against anyone. I mean, even candidates need support system, and a lot of it's probably not even recognizing the impact they're having on a company, right? For them, it's just sort of a day-to-day affair and sort of going on and accepting another offer. It's a very fair point that companies have sort of caused some of this. Agree with that as well. So I think the more we can collaborate, and yeah, you're right, it's not AI, it's raw data. is giving the candidate an opportunity to communicate. It's giving companies a chance to say, get some visibility as early as possible and bring some seriousness to accepting the offer, because that to me is a very serious commitment. And, we can have the pipeline, but once from our point of view, once we give a commitment, we're also holding that job for that particular candidate, right? So I think that the seriousness needs to come. And yeah, any feedback on the platform, please keep it open. We want to build this for the community to make sure that we're addressing the issue. We're open. Natasha, I think, is also on the call. Reach out to us if we can help in any way. Always open to feedback. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Harish. Kamal.
What shall I say? Once in a lifetime moment for recruiters, so riding the wave, many of us, if you ask me. I think we should not get swayed away by, small percentage of ghosters. I know that every time 2 or 3 people were late for the class, the entire 100 students listen who were on time to the teacher, on all of us. It looked like all of us were late, right? So I think that's what we are doing with even the ghosters. So we should possibly have patience and build our employer brand that nobody ghosts us. Like I was looking at the data, some of them showed that these kind of companies, we have hardly any ghosting. So it's to do with your employer brand too, So my recruiting lead showed me that these companies, they took the name and said, we hardly have anything. So it's to do with the brand and I guess how things happen there processually. So it's not all bad. So let's not panic because few people came late to the class. In my view, the next 1 year, we need to be more resilient. And like Abhishek says, hire recruiters who are resilient and also good storytellers so that they can engage with the context of the organization and connect the people who possibly otherwise would have ghosted. And let's hold the hiring managers accountable to engage with people whom they really want to hire. They're not making a guest appearance to interview people and walk away. If we can do that, I think we possibly will be smiling, and 3-4 years later, nobody will be willing to see this recording. They're saying, "Acha, you guys talked about this too," So I'm sure organizations will be more mature, get more intelligent. It's a great learning lesson for organization enterprises to conduct interviews and give great experience to the talent they deserve. That's it from my side. Thank you for the opportunity, NHRDN.
For that, thank you, everybody. And wish you all a happy Friday and a happy and safe holiday season as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. See you. Bye.